Hello, everyone. My name is Victoria. I'm going to be walking you through this session today. If y'all could just let me know in the chats or the questions that you can hear me, that would be great. So you should be hearing my voice and you should be seeing the presentation on the slide, Getting Started with Zoho Remotely. So just go ahead and send a question or send a chat in the chat bar on Showtime, just to let me know that you can hear me and that you can see what you're supposed to be seeing right now. And as soon as I get confirmation that everyone can hear me, we can get started. Okay, cool. So I will dive in. So if you've been to some of our webinars before, this one's actually a little bit different. So like I said, my name is Victoria. I am an evangelist for Zoho. Normally that means that I travel around and go to conferences and give presentations, kind of like this one, to explain to customers how to use our product best, what kind of advantages a platform can leverage over just a collection of applications. But for obvious reasons, I am not really doing that right now, or I'm not doing that at all. So we are kind of shifting a little more into the the web space, the webinar and video space. And so what this webinar really is it's a spot both for me to kind of give you an overview of the different applications so that you know kind of what your next steps are from here. So if you are thinking about using Remotely or you've started using it and you're not sure what you should turn on first, this is a great place to start. But then I also really wanted to be a place for Q&A, and I'm going to do some demo. So really this can be driven largely by what you all are looking for. So if you have questions about Remotely, great, I'm happy to answer those. I'm also happy to answer with any kinds of tips or tricks that we have come up with, because Zoho as a company right now is working from home, but also in general, we are very used to either working from home or working in different offices from the rest of our team. Even the evangelist team is half here in Austin and half in Pleasanton, California. So we have a lot of practice with working remotely, and though it is not the easiest thing in the world, I can definitely impart any tips and tricks if you are struggling with parts of that, even outside of the software. But we will get started by going through just kind of an overview of the different things included in Zoho Remotely. So Remotely, if you don't already know, is Zoho's collection of applications that are essentially here to make it easier for you to to work from home. So this can mean a lot of different things. For some people, this means a lot of adjustments. For some people, it's maybe not going to be that different. But there are a few kind of main platforms that we know that everyone is going to want to smooth out as they shift to working either entirely or mostly remotely. And these pillars are generally communication, collaboration, productivity, and support. So these first three are things that everyone is going to have to deal with all the time. And I think they're the things that by now, I am sure that most of you are already realizing they're kind of the main things that it's kind of hard to get back on board when everyone shifts from working in an office to working at home. But then we have support, which is a little bit more specialized, but still very important. So if you're used to being able to manage all of your support and everything with customers, you need to still be able to do that. So that's not something I'll be demoing today, but I'll walk you through what we have. And if you're interested in remote support, we have another webinar later this week that you can check out. So let's dive into communication. So communication is definitely the foundation of a healthy remote working company. The number one most important thing, I would argue, when you move to working from home is maintaining a level of communication where you can still have a healthy relationship with your coworkers. You can still get things done, and you can generally avoid, stepping on toes, hurting people's feelings, because those things can get really easy when you are communicating. And so with that in mind, we have a few different ways that you can communicate with people. One step that we like to recommend in general, whenever you're trying to communicate something to someone, is figuring out what the best way to communicate that particular idea is. Some people in general prefer phone calls, in general prefer meetings, in general prefer email, but a lot of the time you will have a specific question or a specific thing that you need to deal with that maybe would not do as well in what you're trying to do. If you have a quick question for someone, maybe you don't need to call a meeting for it. Maybe you just need to chat them. And maybe you don't need to send an email to someone for the same kind of thing. But if you have a long thing that needs to be discussed, maybe that does need to be a video meeting, or maybe that needs to be a presentation like this one. So in order to cover as many of these bases as we can, we have Zoho Click. So Click, if you've ever used Slack, very similar. It is a team-based communication tool. I can show you a little bit of that later. So basically, it's an application that lets you chat in really whatever way you want to. You can either chat individually, one-on-one with someone else, or you can chat in a group, or you can create channels. And channels people can pop in and out of. So if you wanted to make sure there's an ongoing discussion about support or something, you could have a support channel. And then people can pop in, ask a question, and pop out. So for kind of instant things that in general you want to get resolved quickly, that don't take, that might take a bunch of back and forth but aren't super incredibly technical, Click is a really good way to go. So then we have Zoho Meeting. So really cool. Yeah, so then we have Zoho Meeting. So Zoho Meeting is a tool to essentially have a video conference with someone. One thing that can be kind of hard to get is the difference between meeting and showtime. So meeting is, in general, I would say what you want to use if you want to have a conversation with someone. And showtime, which is what we're using right now, it's what I'm using to present this to you, is more for presentations or for webinars. And you could potentially have a meeting, some meetings are roundtable discussions, some meetings are one person giving a presentation to update the rest of the team. So maybe for that second kind of meeting, you would use Showtime, and for that first kind, you would use Meeting. So we will, I'll show you a little bit of both of those as well. But yeah, so that's kind of just to cover all of the different bases of communication. We have our quick chat communication in Click. And Click also you can access and use from any application. I think every application in Remotely has a click bar at the bottom, and I'll show you what that looks like later. And then Meeting also has a lot of integrations with other applications, and so does Showtime. So for example, this presentation is stored in WorkDrive, which I can pull from, and now I can edit it in WorkDrive, and it'll still show up here. So what's WorkDrive, you might ask? So the next section is collaboration tools. So the first one of these, and kind of the most central of them, is WorkDrive, like I just mentioned. So WorkDrive is a file management tool, but instead of being kind of individually focused, WorkDrive is a team-based file management tool. So you can come into WorkDrive and your team can share one folder where you can make all of your documents. Everyone can edit them, everyone can see them, and then they can all be managed with kind of these fine-grained user permissions as well. So WorkDrive is a very valuable thing, a very valuable tool, especially when you're remote, but just in general, because it's very easy for, especially in the kind of digital age we're in now, where we're kind of in this transition to more centralized things. It's very easy to have, for example, a document that one person emails to another person, and they download it and they edit it and then they send it to someone else. And by the end of the chain, you have a bunch of versions of this document floating around on everyone's computer. So instead of doing that, what you can do is just create the document in OneDrive, share it with people that way, and then everyone has this one centralized data point that they can all access, and everyone's on the same page, and you don't have a bunch of copies of things floating around. And the next two are pretty similar in concept, but different in execution. So the next two are our project management tools. So we have Zoho Projects. So Zoho Projects is a waterfall or traditional project management tool. So waterfall project management, if you are not familiar, is probably in general what you think of when you think of project management. It's kind of, you have a list of tasks that go in a timeline. Those tasks are grouped into task lists, which are then grouped into milestones, which are then grouped by project. Between these tasks, you can also build dependencies. So for example, if my project is building a house, I cannot put up the walls until I've laid the foundation. So putting up the walls is dependent on me laying the foundation. So this is a very good project management app when it comes to projects that have a lot of dependencies and a lot of collaborators. Because one thing that can definitely happen is, something goes wrong really early in the project and you don't necessarily realize how much it's going to affect when you can deliver that project. And then instead of telling the client right away, hey, this is going to be late, you're not telling them until you're supposed to deliver it. And the other thing that can happen is you kind of, a lot of the time, I think you can get partway through a project and someone is kind of sitting there waiting for it to be their turn and they don't realize that the other person has already completed the task that they needed to complete. And work just doesn't get done because they just don't realize that it's their turn to do something. So those are kind of the problems that you can solve with Zoho Projects. You can set up these reminders, you can set up emails to go out when a dependent task is completed so that someone can just immediately go and do the next part of the project. And you can get a very accurate view of your deadlines and everything. And then we have Sprints. So Sprints is a very clean, very good application, but it is a little more niche. So less people in general would use Sprints fully, though I do know a lot of customers who use Sprints kind of in different ways just because they like the UI and they'll use 30% of it and that works completely fine for them. So Sprints is an application for agile project management. So instead of this being focused on, all right, well, we have a deadline that we need to meet and we've done this before, so we just have to do it again so we know what all the deadlines are going to look like on the way. Sprint says we know where we're going, we know when we have to get there, we do not know how long it's going to take necessarily, so we need to give ourselves buffer time, but also we have no idea how long every milestone is going to take along the way. So instead of it saying, all right, well, part A will be 1 month, part B will be 1 month, etc., you're kind of saying, all right, well, I think this will be about this hard, this will be about this hard, and it's a little more focused on guesstimating as you go. So it's really all about adapting to change, and it can be really valuable for teams that are developing new things or designing. So in general, software development teams use it a lot, so do UI teams. It's a great app, and I think it definitely has functions a lot of people can use, but as a structure, it's definitely a little more niche than Zoho Projects. So then we have the Office Suite. So the Office Suite has exactly what you would expect in an Office Suite. It has a word processor, which is Zoho Writer, an Excel sheet builder, which is Sheet, and a presentation builder, which is what I use to build this presentation, and that's Zoho Show. So these are all each their own individual app, but all of those documents can then be stored in OneDrive. So you still have a centralized spot for everything, but each of the apps that you use to build them is specialized and really built to be as useful as possible. I won't talk too much more about these right now, but I can demo them later. But I think that that's a pretty self-explanatory part of the suite. I think that the Office Suite is definitely something that can be easy to forego because you think, well, I've been using this other thing for a long time. But there are a lot of points where it just does become a lot more convenient to have everything stored in the same place. And though you can definitely store like .docx files in WorkDrive, it's just a little bit easier to make things in Writer. And then you can always download it as a .docx file or as a PDF and send it out that way. So then we have remote support. And again, I'm not going to be demoing these today, but these are definitely very valuable things to add if you are looking for a way to support your customers better. And if you are really interested in these, after I explain them, again, go ahead and check out zoho.com/remotely, and then probably /webinars. And I'll have a link later in the presentation that'll show the exact link. And check out our presentation that's just on remote support. So Zoho Assist is our application for essentially for screen sharing for doing remote support sessions. And that's very, very software based. So if you've ever called, the company who made your computer or who made your operating system, and they have had, done a screen share with you and maybe even taken over your mouse, that's what Assist does. And then Zoho Lens is a similar concept in that it's there to support people, but it tends to be more for field work and more for kind of physical repairs that you're doing. So say that I work in a factory and there's something wrong in a particular physical thing that I can see, but I don't want to explain everything that's wrong over the phone. You can use Lens to use your phone camera to show an expert on the other end what's going on, and they can walk you through how to fix it, and they can draw things on the camera so that you can see, all right, well, the arrow says that this is the thing I need to fix. It's a very handy tool, but a little bit more niche. But if that's something that's useful to you, that's definitely available. Again, go ahead and check out that webinar. So that is a run through of all of these different things. I'm going to do some demo, but I want to get an idea of what everyone is most interested in. In general, people have been most interested in, project management, productivity, communication. So I can walk us through a little bit of projects or a little bit of the Office Suite or Click. But I do want to go through any questions as well. And also, if you have specific things that you want to see, go ahead and put those in the chat. And I am happy to focus on those as well. And I can always point you in the right direction if I can't answer it myself. Okay, so we have one question that's, does everyone involved in the meeting or project have to have a paid Zoho account? If you are, okay, so I don't 100% remember, know the answer off the top of my head for meeting. For projects, I know that you do not. And for Showtime, for example, you do not. I think for meeting as well, you don't, but there are certain restrictions. But for projects, you can always make so there's something called the client portal, which you can make where you can make it so they can see certain things. So if you have a client that wants access to things, then you can give them access that way. But if it's someone who is working on the project, then yes, they would have to have a paid Zoho account. But a Remotely account would work, and those are free through July 1st. Am I using Remotely as a platform for this session? Yes, all of the demo we'll be doing will be from a Zoho Remotely demo account. So it's all going to be launched from the Remotely admin panel. Does Zoho Meeting allow for multiple views, similar to Zoom? Okay, so I have a couple questions on, so that question, I'm going to need some more context on what kind of views exactly you're looking for. I think that we're going to, we should be doing at some point a webinar with more live demo of meeting, but we won't be going through it too much today. But please go ahead and ask. And then I have a question that's, can this be used with webinars and other platforms such as Google Hangouts, Zoom, etc.? I am, again, if you could explain a little more what you mean. So there are parts of this that can definitely work with Google Hangouts, Zoom, etc. But it depends on if you mean this as in Showtime or this as in remotely, and what aspects you're trying to get to work together. Okay, we have a question that says, what's the difference between meeting and Showtime? This is a great question. It's something that I think comes up a lot. So in general, meeting is for meeting with people and having a conversation. There is a webinar tool in Zoho Meeting, but that's mostly because many people do have just a Zoho Meeting subscription. But when it comes to webinars, Showtime has a little more fleshed out functionality there. So if you have both, I would use Meeting for conversations with people, for meetings where you are, discussing something and everyone needs to be able to talk. And I would use Showtime for webinars or presentations where someone is going to be, handing things out, doing polls, and giving a presentation in a deck like we're doing here. So you technically can do webinar in either. You can always try out both, but Showtime is more specialized for it. And it's obviously what we use. It's what our team prefers. Yes, so I hope that answers that question. Okay, we have a question. In the past, Zoho Meeting only allowed the attendees to see one person at a time, whoever was speaking. With Zoom, you can see all attendees regardless of who is speaking. I am not sure if that has changed, but I'm happy to check for you, and I can email you after this. If you just send an email to the webinars alias, I can check into that and let you know. When setting up remotely, are there modules that need to be set up before using modules such as Sheet and Writer, and does Click need to be set up? So Sheet, Writer, and Show basically out of the box are just going to work. Even if you just were to go into, actually, you know what, let's do this in demo. I'm going to hop over to demo. I'll try and keep an eye on the questions. Feel free to keep asking questions. But we will, I will walk you through this over here. So we are in Zoho Remotely. Oh no, there we go. So as you can see, this is the launch panel for Zoho Remotely. There is stuff that you would set up that you can set up over here in the admin panel. You can go in and set up your users. Really, the only thing you would have to set up when it comes to Click is the users, who has access to it, who's an admin, who's a user, all that. But in general, Click is going to be, as long as you decide it'll be turned on, it'll just be on. No one will really have to set it up once you have their email in. And that's also true for Writer, Sheet, and Show. So for example, if I were to go into Work Drive, and I could, and this has obviously been used, but this is exactly what it would look like right out of the box. I don't need to set anything up. It's just going to launch. It'll just work. If you give access to someone for Work Drive, they'll be able to use all of this stuff. So let's do a quick rundown of Work Drive, and then we can take a look at Click and Projects. Okay, let me check on these questions really quick. How many participants in Meeting versus Showtime? And then how about the interactivity tools? So there are more interactivity tools in Showtime. I want to say off the top of my head that Showtime gives you 100 attendees and Meeting gives you something pretty similar, but that should all be available online as well. If you use Zoho One, I wouldn't need Remotely, correct? Correct. This presentation potentially could still be useful for you if you have specific questions, but everything in Remotely is included in Zoho One. So Zoho One is our kind of platform that includes everything that Zoho makes, and Remotely is kind of a subsection of that that's specialized just for working remotely. And then the question, can Meeting and Showtime be used with people outside the company who don't have Zoho? Meeting has some restrictions, but I'm not sure what they are off the top of my head, but Showtime, yes, definitely. Like I'm giving this presentation now, and most people who are attending this webinar do not have Zoho, are not using Zoho emails, and are still able to use and interact with it. Okay, so coming into WorkDrive, we have here, this is just a section called My Folders, but then you can see we also have these things called Team Folders. So in My Folders, you're going to see things that you make, you're going to see things that you are the only one who has access to, and this is the area that's kind of more similar to Google Docs or anything like that, that's more focused on just one person being able to store their files and centralize them and all that. But then we have team folders as well. And these are what I was talking about before, where you have, kind of one centralized folder for your whole team. So instead of me having my documents in one folder and then sharing them out, someone else having their documents in another folder and sharing those out, my team can all just put their documents in here. So all of the documents that are team-wide, that affect everyone, that everyone needs to be able to see, can just go in here and everyone can access them. And you can manage the permissions at a folder level instead of doing it one by one. So when it comes to the team folders, you have a lot of control over all of the kind of privacy and user permissions. So for example, when you come in here, you can see, all right, we have not only a lot of information, but a lot of control over who can do what. So these are the default levels of control available in WorkDrive. So if, for example, you have a bunch of documents and you want everyone in the company to be able to see them, you could set most people to viewer and then just set a couple of people to organizers and admins. And those are the people who are going to be able to, move documents around, edit them, and even delete them. And then you have a lot of fine-grained controls here over, what kind of folder it is. Is it public or private? Can you upload files via email? And can you allow downloads? And this can be a big one for things that are a little more privacy sensitive. So if you have a folder and you want people to be able to see it and edit it, but you don't want anyone taking it onto their computer and downloading it, you can just turn that ability off and then people won't be able to download those. And then you can see we have the trash. Only, I want to say only admins can empty the trash. So even if someone on your team tries to delete a file, it'll just get moved to the trash and you'll still have final say over whether or not it gets deleted. And then you have this, which shows you all of this information about everything that anyone has done with relation to this folder. And you can also turn on external sharing links or not. So that's kind of the deal with the team folders, is it's this one centralized shared space where everyone can collaborate on things without having to send files back and forth. And then in general, in WorkDrive, we have a lot, we have very smooth integrations with things like, Writer, Sheet, and Show. So I want to show you those really quick. So if I were to open this Writer document, you would see, wow, this is Brandon's work document. And there's a lot of stuff I can do here. So number one is I can see it. I can just open it up really easily and it'll bring me into Zoho Writer, which is this very clean UI. But then the next thing I can do is I can basically edit it. But if I don't necessarily want to be making permanent edits, if I want to make sure that Brandon can approve everything I do, then I can turn on this mode right here called Track Changes mode, and I can just delete things or change things. And Brandon would be able to then come in and go into review mode and accept any of these changes that I made. I can also leave comments. So this is a really great way to flesh out documents that maybe a lot of people are working on. It can be kind of hard if you're working on a document alone and then you have a team who is giving you suggestions that you have to keep track of not in the document. So instead of that, you can put them all in here and you can just view them all in one place in the document itself and just go through and accept or reject those edits as you go. When you have a document in Writer, there are a few things you can do with it. So one is you can download it, and this I think can be a pretty big sticking point. I have not had a Microsoft Word account in many years, but I have had to hand in documents as a .docx file or as a PDF maybe. And I've done that just by using something like this, where I can save my document as a .docx or as a PDF, and then send it along to whoever needs to view it. So, for example, if you're working with a client, that client probably is not using Zoho Writer, but you might want to use Zoho Writer and still be able to give them their files in a way that they can read them. So you can just download them in a way like this. And also, if you were to upload something as a .docx file, it would go the other way and you would be able to edit it in Writer. So you have a lot of flexibility there to keep communicating with people in whatever file format they use most, while also keeping the ease of use of Writer, which is integrated with WorkDrive. So I don't think I'm going to go into Sheet and Show because they are pretty much exactly what you would expect. You can use them to make presentations, you can use them to make Excel sheets, and that is kind of all of the most important stuff about Zoho WorkDrive. So now I want to show you a little bit about Click. If anyone has particular interest in projects or sprints, please let me know, and I will show you a little bit of that as well. But we will get started on Click. So, like I said, Click is our team chat tool, preloaded with motivational quotes, which I know is a big sticking point for all of you. It was one for me for sure. So we can come in here and we can chat with people one-on-one, or I could chat with people in a group. So for example, we have this new client onboarding chat where our client is saying, my website is bad and I'm sad. But then we also have something like this channel with the daily briefing. And I can chat with someone and get all of these responses that then everyone in this group can see. And I can also add people to this chat or remove them from this chat. And I can also interact with people one-on-one, which is great because not everyone in the office wants to see how well my sourdough is doing, but I'm sure some people do. You can even have a sourdough chat. You can have a work from home tips chat channel that people can pop in and out of whenever they want to. There's really a lot of flexibility with Click. And one of my favorite things about it is that it gives me the opportunity to, even though I'm working from home, so there's no physical difference between working and not working, I can keep my chats that are work-related or that I would have maybe in the office on one technology on Click. And then I can just use text for more personal interactions. So I might interact with my coworkers both on Click and on text, and I can maintain kind of that same level of, all right, well, this is where the work things happen. This is where the personal discussions happen. And it makes it a lot easier to just kind of get an idea of, what kind of work-life balance can I maintain as we work here. I'm getting distracted by this bread. It looks very good. All right, we'll close that so I stop dreaming of sourdough. I just got a question if this would be equivalent to Slack. Yes, this is very similar to Slack. But it has an advantage when it comes to any Zoho products, in that not only can I use it all here, which is good, but like, for example, I use Click all the time, every day, the entire day I'm at work, I'm on Click. And I very rarely actually visit this part of the website because every other part of Zoho that I use has this little chat bar at the bottom. So we have it here. For example, if I were to open Projects, you would also be able to see it here. And I can discuss things with people over Click right from whatever application I'm using. This can be really useful because people tend to have different kind of home-based apps. So like if I do project delivery, Projects is probably my home base, but if I'm a content writer, then Writer and WorkDrive is probably my home base. So this way everyone can keep in communication with people without necessarily needing to leave the application that they're spending most of their time in and go to another application. So that is most of the important stuff on Click. I don't have a bunch of questions right now, so I will show you a little bit of Zoho Projects. This is the last thing I'm going to demo for you. So please feel free to send in any questions you have, and we can answer some more questions, and I can show you a couple more things after this if we have specific questions and places we want to go. So, for example, this is a project called New Client Onboarding. So like I explained earlier, here's a great example of this. I was working on this project, Bob clicked me and said, hey, and now if I wanted to, I could respond here, and I can do this all without leaving Zoho Projects. So Zoho Projects, like I said earlier, is a waterfall project management application. So that means that we can zoom all the way out and look at something just as a project. And that's kind of this level, this dashboard where you can see, all right, what is going on, what's closed, what's open, what's in other phases. And then I can break that down a little bit further into my milestones. And these are pretty easy to understand and easy to digest chunks of the project. And then once I click into that, I could break it down into task lists, which would then break it down into tasks. So this is all very exciting. So that is, I think, mostly important just because it means that you can keep all of your context. So like this is kind of the contextual view of your project, but then you can still get that really detailed view of your project. So when you're working on a really big project, you want to make sure that you don't lose track of, all right, well, what about my big picture deadlines? What about my budget? All that. But you also need to know, all right, well, who exactly did this one thing on April 2nd? Who exactly filed this document, so that you can correct things as you go. So then we have some more. So the dashboard, I think, is pretty self-explanatory. It's just kind of a place to come check in at the beginning of your day and see, all right, are there any fires I need to put out? Is there anyone I need to congratulate, sorry. But you're probably going to be spending more time in the other modules. So this is the task module. This is not necessarily how everyone is always going to be looking at their tasks, and in fact, probably most people will not be spending much time here unless, for example, they're looking at just their own tasks or just someone else's tasks. In general, I think people are not just kind of looking at, you know, all right, well, let me see every task involved in this project. But it is good to have this list because for probably someone on your team, you know, whoever is managing the project, your project delivery person, the DRI, whoever is in charge of making sure things get done on time, that person probably does want to look at the full to-do list. So let's say I am the project delivery person. I'm looking at this. The information I'm going to need right away in general is probably going to be over here. So I need to know, all right, well, what is it? Whose responsibility is it? What's the status? What are any tags associated with it, which is great for filtering. So that, if you have a really big project, you can look at all of the tags that require, all of the tasks that require a certain tag. And then you can see your start and your due date. Then as I scroll over, I get to other information that is also important, but not stuff that I really need that often, but just something that I might need when it comes to doing some bookkeeping later. And at the very end of all of this scrolling, we get to all of the finance information. So for example, we have the work hours. One hot tip I'm going to give you: if you are going to use projects, set up your work hours right away. Every task can have different work hours, and that just says how many hours do you think this is going to take. So a lot of those very pretty graphs that we saw earlier were built by projects from your work hours. So you're not building those charts or anything. Projects is doing it itself, but only if you input your work hours. So that's you saying this is how long I think this is going to take. Your employee could then log that time and say, all right, well, this is how long it did take, which you could then push to your finance team. And then we can see, the difference, the actual hours, and all of that other information. So within every task, we have a lot of information about not only where it's at right now, but where it's been. So we can see, all right, well, who did this? What's the status? When's the due date? And then I can also see all of this other kind of information that will let me kind of retrace the steps. If, for example, 2 months after this task is complete, I'm like, where did that document go? Or why did this person say this thing to the client when I think it was actually this thing? So I can come in here and retrace those steps and say, all right, well, does anyone have any comments? Maybe someone left a comment that said, hey, this thing got delayed because of this, but it'll only be delayed by a half day. Maybe we have subtasks where it's other little things that need to get done. And I can also see log hours. So this is useful not only for viewing, but also if I'm an employee and I'm coming over here to check on everything and upload everything, then right from here I can log my hours for that task. I can also attach any documents. So from here, I could actually upload something like a .docx file, and then I would be able to immediately edit that in Writer, re-download as a .docx file, and send it back out to the customer. And then there's also this other information, we have dependencies, forums, issues, and activities. The main point here, as you can see, there's kind of a lot you can associate with a task. The main kind of thing to see is you get a lot of context with this application, but you do not lose any of the nitty-gritty detail. So this is another chart that I would say is really context-based. So you need to know, all right, well, what needs to get done? What does my timeline look like? My big scale timeline, and what's dependent on what? And I want to have this as well as all of that, really detailed information. So this is the Gantt chart. And in the Gantt chart, we can see things like how long is each task supposed to take and what tasks are dependent on other tasks. But I can also use this to adjust things. So if I know that getting the contract approved by legal is actually going to take an extra few days, I can just move that along. And it will push anything that's dependent on it along with it. So I immediately know, all right, well, here's when that's actually going to get done. And it just gives me a really clear idea of what the date I'm going to finish this is actually going to look like. And that can be hard to do when it comes to these really big projects, because we always think we can make up lost time kind of in the cracks. And sometimes you can, but it's just better to have a realistic view up front and say, all right, well, this got delayed by this much, so the whole project is going to be delayed by this much. Yeah, so that's kind of the main thing with the Gantt chart. There are some other reports in here that are also useful, but that is all kind of the primary list of things that I think are most important for projects. Like I said before, you can set up client portals in projects. Everyone who uses it can not only use projects here, but there are also integrations with something like Click. So you could create a channel to talk to people about a certain task. So I can come in here, create a new channel or a new chat and chat specifically about this thing. So it's very well tied in to everything else, every other Zoho product. And yeah, that is the bulk of it. So we went through the Office suite, we went through Projects, WorkDrive, and Click. And I think that is most of what I have for you. But I'm going to be hanging around for a couple minutes, so please send your questions. If there's anything that you want me to go back and cover again, I'm happy to do that. And we can dive a little deeper if there's anything in particular that you were interested in. Okay, looks like we don't have any questions, so unless anyone has something that they want to send in, I will sign up here. I hope this was helpful. Don't feel, if you got the email before this, feel free to send us any emails you have with questions about any of this. And again, if you want more specialized information about any particular apps, feel free to go check out our webinars page and go to one of the sessions specifically about one of those other apps. But that is all. I hope you all have a great, oh, wait, sorry. We got a question about pricing that I did not see. Yeah, so pricing for Remotely. Sorry about that. So Remotely is free until July 1st. So at the moment, it is free. We do not, as far as I know, we have not published any pricing for Remotely, but I am assured that it's going to be reasonable, like all of our pricing is. But yes, it'll be likely by user. But again, it's free until July 1st. And just to give you like some context, something like Zoho One is $30 per user per month. And this is kind of a subset of, it's a few of the applications that Zoho One offers. So I hope that helps. Yeah, I am told that it will be listed soon on the website, so keep an eye out. But yes, feel free to, you'll definitely be able to use it entirely until July 1st for free. Okay, do we have any other questions? I do not see any. Okay, thank you so much, everybody. Again, feel free to send us an email and check out some of our other webinars. I hope you all have a great Tuesday.